Video games emerged as commercial entertainment in mid-1971, laying the groundwork for the new entertainment industry to emerge in the US, Japan, and Europe in the late 70s and early 80s. With the development of the game industry, more realistic video games have been released. Today we will get rid of these games and introduce old video games. Here are the world's oldest video games. Gunfight, Western Gun, ranks 10th in our list. Developed by Tomohiro Nishikado, one of the Taito employees, and released in 1975, the game is one of the first successful arcade games released by Taito. Gunfight is one of the first games to depict the war between humans. Midway is the first video game to use a microprocessor. Tank is ranked 9th on our list. It is an arcade game developed by Key Games, a subsidiary of Atari, and released in November 1974. In the game, two players shoot each other and mark X in a central minefield as they lead tanks through a maze seen from above. They try to avoid the represented mines. Destroying a tank from a mine or a projectile earns the opposing player 1 point and respawns after the tanks are destroyed. The winner is the player with more points when time runs out, and each game is usually a minute or two long. Grand Track 10 is in the 8th place of the list. Grand Track 10, released by Atari in May 1974, is the second racing game published by the company after the failure of Space Race. Grand Track 10, which is considered the first car racing game, is a single-player game. He drives a car along the racetrack, looking down, avoiding the pole walls and trying to pass as many checkpoints as possible before time runs out. The game is controlled by a steering wheel, gas and brake pedals, and a gear lever, and if the car hits a pillar it will crash and spin. 7th place on our list is Space Race. Atari Incorporated. It is an arcade game developed by and released on July 16, 1973. It was the company's second game after Pong, which marked the beginning of the commercial video game industry. In the game, two players each control a rocket ship with the goal of being the first to move their ship from the bottom of the screen to the top. Along the way, there are asteroids that players must avoid. Space Race was the first racing arcade video game and the first to aim to cross the screen while avoiding obstacles. Ranked 6th on our list is Pong. It is a table tennis-themed Twitch arcade sports video game with simple two-dimensional graphics, produced by Atari and first released in 1972. Shortly after its release, several companies began producing games that closely mimicked the game. Started. Eventually, Atari's competitors released new types of video games that deviated to varying degrees from Pong's original format, which prompted Atari to encourage its staff to expand beyond Pong and produce more innovative games. Magnavox Odyssey Games is in the 5th place of the list. Magnavox Odyssey, developed by Ralph H. Baer, who introduced the video game console idea, and Bill Harrison and Bill Rush, is the first home video game console to be released. Magnavox agreed to manufacture the console in 1971 and Magnavox Odyssey Games it was released in September 1972. The 12 games included in the console included table tennis, skiing, Simon Says, Cat and Mouse, and Haunted House. Galaxy Game is at the 4th place on our list. The creators of the game, which was released in November 1971, are Bill Pitts and Hugh Tuck. The duo built a second prototype in June 1972, replacing the first prototype at Treziter. It featured simultaneous playing of multiple games on 4 monitors, but only 2 consoles with monitors were installed due to space constraints. During installation, the duo spent $65,000 on the project, but failed to make the game commercially viable. The game's second console, which did not find commercial success, is still in working condition and is displayed in a playable form at the PC History Museum. Computer Space ranks third on our list. It is a Spacewar arcade game developed in 1971. Created by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney in partnership with Syzygy Engineering, it was the first arcade video game and the first commercially available video game. The first video to span multiple computer installations, it is a derivative of the 1962 video game Spacewar. It features a player-controlled rocket that engages in missile combat with a pair of hardware-controlled flying saucers placed against a starfield background. The goal is to get more hits from enemy spaceships in a given time, and this gives you a free game round. Spacewar is at the second place on the list. It is one of the most important and influential games in the early history of video games. It was immensely popular in the small programming community in the 1960s, and was widely ported and recreated in other computer systems at the time, especially after computer systems with monitors became more common towards the end of the decade. It has also been rebuilt in more modern programming languages for PDP-1 emulators. In 2007, Spacewar was named on the Library of Congress's list of the 10 most important video games of all time that marked the beginning of the gaming canon, and in 2018 by the Strong and the International Center for Electronic Games History. Inducted into the Video Game Hall of Fame. Finally, number 1 of the earliest video games is Tennis for Two. American physicist William Higginbotham showed the game at Brookhaven National Laboratory's annual public exhibition in 1958 after learning that the government research agency's Donner Model 30 analog computer could simulate orbits with wind resistance. Designed to display. He designed the game in a matter of hours, then built it over a 3-week period with technician Robert V. Dvorak. The game was viewed on an oscilloscope and played with 2 custom aluminum controllers. His images show a representation of a tennis court when viewed from the side, with players adjusting the angle of their shot with a button on their controller and attempting to hit the ball over the net with the push of a button. By some definitions, Tennis for Two is considered the first video game, although it does not contain any technological innovations over previous games, as it was the first computer game created solely as an entertainment product and not for academic research or commercial technology promotion.